Welcome to the Travis on Sports podcast, the show where I give my thoughts about the latest sports news. As always, I'm your host, Travis Tyler. I'm a freelance writer and blogger, and I'm glad to be here with you on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Travis on Sports YouTube channel, Facebook, and Twitter. Today is Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. On this week's show, it's been a pretty slow news cycle the past couple weeks as far as I've seen it, so I'm just going to go into a few things that might end up being a pretty short episode. We'll talk about the Mlb Playoffs, the new career passing yards leader in the NFL, and the NFL season so far, as well as a little issue for an NBA star and a former NFL Pro Bowler who was just released earlier tonight. So, as we speak, the Mlb Playoffs have started with the Red Sox and Yankees playing in the American League wildcard game. Right now, it is 3-0 Red Sox in the top of the fifth inning. And the winner will play the number one seed in the American League, the Tampa Bay Rays, who won the American League East with a 162 win-loss record. The Red Sox and Yankees narrowly beat out Toronto and Seattle for the final two playoff spots in the American League. There was a chance we were going to have a couple play-in games to just get to this wild card game, which essentially itself is a play-in game. But that didn't happen. And the other American League divisional series, other than Tampa against the winner of this game, will be Chicago and the Houston Astros. I think pitching is going to be a big key. It always is in the playoffs because, the teams with the aces are usually the teams that win the games in the playoffs. But pitching so far has proved to be a big variable in this wild card game. And I think in terms of the winner of this game going on to face the Rays, I think it's also going to be a big factor. New York probably has better pitching than Boston. Boston, especially in the bullpen, not very deep. And the Rays use that unique pitching system where they don't have their starters go very long. They use that opener, play a lot of bullpen games, use the bullpen quite a bit, and don't really have that ace that most playoff teams would have. So that could be a challenge that Tampa faces in the playoffs. It didn't really hurt them till later in the playoffs last season, but we'll see what happens here. In the National League, the wild card game will take place tomorrow night with the LA Dodgers with a 106-win season playing host in the wild card game to the hottest team in baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals. The Dodgers, as I mentioned, won 106 games. They're the defending World Series champions. They might be the best wild card team ever. They've got a stacked lineup. They've got stacked pitching. Yet they lost their division by a game to the San Francisco Giants and had the second best record in baseball. But again, they're in the wild card. They lose tomorrow night. They're out. I would pick the Dodgers just because of how deep they are and how good their team is. But also the Cardinals, as I said, are the hottest team in baseball. They are 24-9 since the beginning of September. And at that point, they weren't really going to make the playoffs. It was a very, very outside chance, and they've played their way in, and now they have a chance to eliminate the defending champs and the second best team in baseball in terms of wins and losses. And the winner of that game will take on the San Francisco Giants in the best-of-5 National League Division Series. The other best-of-5 National League Division Series will be the Atlanta Braves and the Milwaukee Brewers. The American League Division Series will start Thursday, October 7th, with both series playing Game 1. And then the NLDS will start both series playing Game 1 on October 8th. And the American League Series will be in Game 2 on that night. Tom Brady now holds the league's career passing yards record as he broke Drew Brees' record that was just set a few years ago in his game against the Patriots. So it's unique in the fact that he did it against his old team, the team that he's going to go into the Hall of Fame representing, and he broke it with another future Hall of Famer in Drew Brees, watching Tom break the record he set just a few years ago as a part of the NBC broadcasting team now. It's a simple thing, but it's a big deal because it's another stamp on Brady's legacy, and it also, he broke Breeze's record pretty quickly. But the other current quarterbacks in the league are pretty far from that mark, so it could stand for a while. And so I've been talking about NFL and college football on my other podcast, The Football Savant, each week with previews and recaps and all that stuff from each week. But I've decided on this podcast I am going to provide some thoughts on a monthly basis on what has transpired during the NFL season. So right now we're almost a month in. It's a 17-game season this time. It's the first ever 17-game season in league history. One of the most surprising teams so far is the Arizona Cardinals. They're the only remaining undefeated team. They had an impressive showing against the previously undefeated LA Rams. They're both in the same division out in the NFC West, and both offenses were clicking going into that game. And Arizona's clicked more in that matchup, and it was impressive on the road. The Arizona offense was going to start clicking eventually. They had too many playmakers not to. The defense has improved dramatically, and if the team overall keeps this up, they'll have a shot to win the division, maybe even more. And Kyler Murray will absolutely be in the discussion for the MVP this year. On the other side of that, the Jaguars and the Lions are the only remaining winless teams, both 0-4. I think Detroit is a better team than Jacksonville, maybe not by much, but a better team. And they definitely have a little bit of a softer schedule when I look at it. But again, those will probably be your two teams working towards the number one pick in April's draft, which is projected to be Oregon defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau. Detroit this week has what should be a winnable game against Minnesota. The Vikings haven't played that well this year, but Lions are dealing with a lot of injuries to key players. They've lost Jeff Okudah and Romeo Okwara for the season with Achilles injuries. And so they're down to third stringers playing on defense, young guys that are in their first year in the league, undrafted guys playing critical roles. They're going to be likely without center Frank Ragnow and left tackle Taylor Decker. Decker hasn't played all year. So that could be a difficult task for them. And if they don't get the win this week, it could be in another month maybe, at least, before they win a game. Now, Jacksonville might be even more difficult because everywhere, I was looking at their schedule earlier, and everywhere you look, they're playing a playoff game from last season, except for in late November when they play the Atlanta Falcons, who are also a bad team this year. So I see that as their first legitimate chance to get a win, unless there's some huge miraculous surprise or something there. Another surprise in kind of a bad way so far is that Kansas City is currently in last place in the AFC West. I don't think that'll last very long, but Patrick Mahomes has made some questionable decisions, as I've talked about on my other podcast, with throwing a few bad interceptions, and when they played the Chargers, it cost the team the game. So there's that, and then also every team in the division seems to be much more improved, a much better team, not better than Kansas City, but better than they were last year, and much more competitive than they were last year. Especially on offense, you got the Raiders and the Chargers are putting up points. Denver can get there. They're not scoring at the same clip. And then the biggest thing, especially with the Raiders, is that they actually have, so far this season, played respectable on defense. So if they keep getting that, it could be a challenging season between all four of the teams in the AFC West. Now, it's still early. A lot can change. Also, in not really a surprise category, but in the negative category, Pittsburgh Steelers beat Buffalo in that first game, and they have that super elite defense with a bunch of young potential defensive superstars. But their offense has been terrible. Roethlisberger doesn't look nearly the same as he used to. I mean, he looks much more similar to last season when he started struggling. There's not as much zip on the ball. The passes are a little more inaccurate. The offense has become pretty predictable, and they don't throw the ball downfield at all anymore. Plus, he doesn't have very good protection. So the Steelers might be entering the next phase of their franchise, which resembles a rebuild. I say resembles because Steelers, one of the more storied franchises in the league, they don't really rebuild. And currently they have one of the best young coaches in the game, been there forever, could possibly end up in the Hall of Fame with them. And they have one of the best defenses in the league, and it's still a young defense too. It's not like it's a bunch of old 10-year guys. It's guys who have been drafted and brought in recently for the most part. So what they're really going to really need to do is you hear people saying there's this retooling process when they won't use the term rebuild. To me, Pittsburgh is really a retooling process. They need better offensive linemen. They need to find the next quarterback, and then they should be good as long as they can hang on to some of their skill players. But yeah, they're not far off. It's pretty evident that some of their players are near the end of their careers. A positive surprise in the AFC North is the Cincinnati Bengals. So far, they're 3-1, tied for first place with Cleveland and Baltimore. I think it's a bit early to put any stock into how the Bengals are in terms of wins and losses, whether they're for real or not. But I am interested to see how long they hang around with the way they've been clicking on both sides of the ball. Logan Wilson has been a monster on that defense. Joe Burrow and his young receivers look like a future offensive, not really a juggernaut, but an offensive squad to be reckoned with, especially if they have Joe Mixon there at running back. So they're an intriguing young team. It's taken a while for Zach Taylor to get them around. He may have been on the hot seat coming into this year, but maybe that's why you give them the time to build it up, because so far they've looked pretty good. The AFC South is probably one of the biggest struggling divisions. Tennessee's leading that division at 2-2. They've definitely looked like the best team, but they got thumped in their opener against Arizona, and they lost to the Jets last week. So inconsistencies that got to get cleaned up before we can really say who that division is. The Colts, to me, have the second best roster in that division, but they're incredibly underachieving, and their offense just has not been good. So they need to find that ability to score more consistently and help out that defense, because we all know it's an elite defense. But the turnaround is not going to happen without finding the offense. NFC East, Dallas and Washington look like the best teams right now, and I would take Dallas right now because their offense is way better, and right now they look more serviceable on defense than they did last year. They don't look elite on defense, but Washington's offense doesn't look good. They're playing with a backup quarterback, and their defense, which carried the team to the division win last year, talking about Washington, doesn't look like it's on the same level. There's some disconnect there for some reason, and until that defense returns to looking leaps and bounds better than Dallas's defense and the other defenses in that division, Washington still the second best team in that division, but they're going to struggle unless they get more production from some of their guys. NFC North looks like, again, it's early, but it looks like Green Bay, even after that struggling first week. Detroit is a bad team, shoots itself in the foot all the time, needs more talent, more resources, needs a couple of years of rebuilding there. Minnesota and Chicago, not necessarily bad teams. I mean, maybe the Bears could be considered a bad team at times, but all in all, realistically, they're too inconsistent to be taken seriously as contenders in that division this year. Now, if Rodgers is gone next year, like a lot of people are predicting he will be, it's going to be a wide open division, probably a